Hello and welcome back to the world-famous Driving You Crazy podcast. This is the show where we usually talk about all things transportation, but instead, well, we're talking about how the virus is affecting transportation and our world and our lives, and we are back at it. I am very excited to say that we are back after a couple of months off because of, the virus situation. I am the traffic anchor for Denver 7 News, Jayson Luber, and with me today, via super secret internet hookup or phone line or something like that, is the one, the only, Nicole Brady. Nicole, so
yes!
Where are you? How are you doing? What's going on?
What are we doing? 2 months it's been. Oh my gosh. I am in my car right now, actually, Jayson, driving.
All right. And how are the roads?
So safely using a hands-free device here. I am seeing, they've been good. I've been surprised really throughout this how much traffic I still see at our time of day, especially. But I know it's nothing like what it would be if things were normal.
No. Of course.
I expected them to be even more empty, though, I guess.
I have some quantitative, some data that we could talk about in a little bit, all about how much less traffic there is during this whole thing, from before and after and during. So it has obviously been a lot lighter out on the roads. And otherwise, how have you been dealing with the whole quarantine deal?
Oh my gosh, up and down, like everyone, I'm sure. You've got the days when you think, okay, I can do this. Things are going to get back to normal eventually, and life is good still, and I'm grateful for what I have. And then I have the days where I just want to crawl back into bed and not face another day of this world. So,
right.
Yeah, so quite a range there.
That is quite the range. I think a lot of us feel that similar way. But so much has changed since the last episode that I recorded at the end of March. I was sent home for a day, and then I came back to the studio for a week, and then I was sent back home again. But
yeah.
You have been basically on the road the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, our life as reporters was already somewhat remote. So in some ways, not much has changed about how I do my daily job. It's the workflow is a little different, but basically I still get up and go out to a live shot every morning. And then the only difference is we're pretty much banned from the building.
Right.
So after the morning newscast, I can't come back to the building, except I have been sneaking in to use the restroom sometimes, because where else am I supposed to use the restroom, right?
Right. Well, when I was doing,
there's no Starbucks that I can go in
right.
now, so when I'm not near enough to my home on a live shot, I'll usually try to go back to the station. Otherwise, if I'm closer to home, I'll go back home and then work from home a little bit. And then sometimes we have a live shot for the 11. Sometimes we don't. So a lot of the work has been similar. But I will say I have been doing a lot of work just in my car, because I cannot stand to work at home with the kids there and all that activity going on around me. It's just that I don't know how anyone is getting work done that way.
Yeah, no, that's really hard.
I have to go to my car.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know, it's because we've been doing that same thing with our kids, doing the online learning. As soon as I get out of my basement doing the morning show, then the girls are usually getting up at about that time, so then they can have their breakfast and then start doing their schoolwork. But obviously that's ending now, as school is basically over after today.
Thank God.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
You haven't
I can't do it again. I don't know how I'm going to last if we have to keep doing remote learning next school year. They're talking, that was my story today. They're talking about having plans to reopen the buildings, but still have some remote learning. And I have decided, Jayson, and I'm very serious here, I'm going to become one of those radical non-school parents. Have you ever seen these people?
Sure.
Free range, let the kids learn from nature, basically. That's the direction I'm going next year.
So you're just going to let your kids wander the neighborhood.
Right. I learn about life.
Figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
Get out.
Figure it out. And maybe when this is behind us in 2 years, they can go back to normal school or something. So,
We'll keep your room and we'll keep your bed all nice and cozy for you, but until then, get out.
yeah, exactly. And I can't take it anymore with having all of the computers together. My husband gets the office, basically. He has an office. He can work from home in that all day, but I have to work amongst the children. So I don't know how I got the end of that deal. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. I mean, someone kind of has to watch them a little bit. And so I don't, and I've already done half of my work for the day, by 7 a.m.
And presumably, you are the more responsible adult in your family.
Presumably, yes. And I'm the only one who really cares enough about getting some of that remote learning done. I mean, again, it's over now, but my husband at the beginning of it was just said, nah, we're not going to do this. It doesn't matter. They're in first and kindergarten. Who cares? And I said, well, we can't just opt out. Like, that's not allowed. We have to do some of it at least. And the teachers are emailing and asking, where's this assignment? And so, it falls on parents to get, even for the littler kids that, we know they'll probably be okay. A kindergartner will probably catch up, but yeah, we had to do some of it still. We couldn't just completely opt out. So there we were. And it fell on me to do a lot of it. But he's been taking care of what he can throughout the day as well. So all of us are kind of sharing those responsibilities at home right now, I assume. Being a single parent, I have no idea how they're doing it. I mean, so many people have it so much worse.
Right.
And harder, I get, and those who still have to go to work every day and take their kids to some kind of daycare or leave them with a family member if they can. I mean, I really just don't even know how it's working out for all of those people. So,
and that's what's going to compound the whole situation in the fall, because there are a lot of parents that are obviously two-parent households that need to work,
right,
and they have to get out of the house, and they need the kids to go to a school or before school, after school care, and that's what they need to survive. And if they don't have it, they're going to be in a bad way. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the fall. You haven't had to go back and do any studio work yet, have you? Like anchor in the studio during this time, right?
No, and I don't know what's going to happen if there's vacations this summer. I mean, who's going on vacation, right? But I think some of us are planning to take a little time off here and there, and so I don't know if there will be times when I'm expected to be back in the studio or not, or if they'll try to keep it limited to just the people who've been there. I mean, they're really being very cautious. Our station has been very cautious about who is supposed to be coming to the building, and really limiting the number of people. And I saw our general manager yesterday, and he's thinking it's going to be a year before we're back to any kind of normal.
That's crazy. That's the first time I've heard that, because I've been hearing that
breaking news.
Yes,
there?
that is breaking news.
So I had gone to the station to, as I said, use the restroom yesterday. Then I got back in my car. I was doing a little work, and then Brian Sanders, our anchor, came out, so I chatted with him in the parking lot, and then Dean, our general manager, showed up, and I chatted with him a little. So that was the first socializing I've done at work with anyone except the photographer that I'm with in the morning. I mean, that's the first time I've seen anyone else from the station in months.
That is, but that is interesting news.
But he said a year probably, and mostly because it's worked out okay to do it this way.
But I don't think he wants all the studio people to be out for a year. I think he's talking salespeople and maybe some of the.
We talked specifically about sales. He said specifically there's really no reason that reporters and photographers need to be coming back to the newsroom. We're all so remote anyway. He said, we talked about Lisa's weather shot in the morning. It looks nice, in her backyard. And you could imagine that actually is something we might want to keep.
Really?
I'm sure. Well, so this is all news to you.
Oh yes, no, this is all breaking news right to me.
say this all in a public podcast.
Well, see, here's the thing. See, I'm working in my basement with just the stuff that I've put together. This is me working off of a cell phone and in my basement. Lisa has a husband who does this for a living, where he sets up cameras and sets up live shots and has the remote capabilities and has the wireless microphones, and he has all that equipment to set up remote broadcasts. And they have multiple cameras. They have lights. They have all these cool things, the signal with very little to no delay. I have a selfie stick and an iPhone. It's been a process to create this home setup that I have and put it all together over a weekend is what I was tasked with, all by myself. Meanwhile, everybody else has, married to these photographers, former news photographers who have all this stuff. I'm
sorry you're not married to Zoomy.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I'm not married to Zoomy.
I have missed your rants, though, Jayson. This is music to my ears to hear you fired up again. It's been way too long. You're right, though. A lot of us don't have nearly the capabilities to do something from our homes that looks anything close to what Lisa and Anne Trujillo have. Anne Trujillo's husband, of course, also a photographer, and
has all the same equipment and all that stuff because he's set up for that.
Yeah. So, no, I don't have anything. I think that it's possible that myself and Micah in the morning, we may be the only reporters without setups. There might be a few others dayside, but my understanding is that a lot of the reporters were given some stuff to set up somewhat of a remote, something where they could do a live shot from their homes. But because our shift is so different than the normal daytime shift, they just kind of never approached us with that. So
yeah, I was eventually given, after about a month and a half, a light that has helped out. But that's it. That's really the only assistance that I've had through this entire process.
Yeah. I think I never complained, because if I had to be in my house all the time right now, I would go crazy. I like getting out and going and at least seeing the photographer in the morning and getting outside. And now that it's nice outside too, it's actually really nice to still go out in the mornings. And that is my sense of normalcy still in this whole situation. And if I didn't have that, I think I would be worse off even. So I'm kind of glad to do it this way and still go out, still be live in the mornings. I think we also provide the viewers maybe a sense of normalcy too.
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like it's, even seeing the anchors that are still in the studio, I think you should be back in the studio soon.
I do too. I think because the anchors, because they had Brian on remote for about a week, but it was tough for him and Molly to have any kind of chemistry because you are so split and the delay, and it's easier to be in the same room. And I think it's going to be the same for all. I mean, when all of us get in the same room, it's a lot easier to interact with each other. But for me, there's a lot of talk about me because I've been now done at 7 o'clock, and the streaming broadcast that continues till 9, those folks have been without me for the last 2 months, and they are saying, hey, when are we going to get him back, because we could use his content and we could use his, basically I take up a lot of time, and they don't want to produce more than they have to, so because I take up that time that they would normally have to produce other things. And obviously I give, I think, some pretty decent and award-winning information at times. And I can't really work the extra 2 hours for the streaming broadcast from here because there's so much to do with it, even more than the regular broadcast. So it would make sense for me to be back at the studio. And my guess was, because there's already been a little chatter on email about it, maybe coming back the week of June 1st, but I have not heard anything definite about that yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's making sense. I'm really excited actually to get into your traffic data because I've been curious about how different it's been. But I think as traffic picks up a little more again, you need to be watching that more closely and with all your full capabilities. And I think, like you said, it just gives you the chance to interact more with the anchors and gets us back to, again, that more normal look of things. So,
exactly. And before we get into some of that traffic data, This is 2 months, as we mentioned, after the last episode, and it's interesting because as I was working on this episode before, the last couple of days, before I was sent home, I was working on what was going to be this episode, number 165. But okay, so I had some notes. And I want to go through some of my notes from that time 2 months ago of what I was prepared to say with you if we were going to do the original 165th episode 2 months ago. So these are some of my notes. I said, or was going to say, I think schools are done for the year. Yeah, check. That came out to be a prophecy right there. I said, I think the panic grocery shopping will also stop. It did for the most part. It did take a little while longer to see stuff in the stores than I thought it would, because really we're a delivery economy that's based on get it to the stores just in time it's needed, more than have it hanging around just so we can just refill easily. That's just not that's the way our economy is right now, and our supply chain is. We talk too much about supply chain. There's very little inventory, and I do think though that will be a change going forward, so we don't go through this whole toilet paper shortage again.
Yeah, interesting.
I also said in my notes that the closing of restaurants has exacerbated the grocery shortage problem, and in many ways wrecked farmers and wasted lots of food that would have gone to restaurants. That has also come to fruition.
That's true, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I said that
Nostradamus here.
Yeah, well,
wow.
yeah, these are my core trains. We could see some. I said we could see some more travel restrictions internationally and even within the country. I was thinking that the hot spots like New York City, Seattle, San Francisco might be some of the travel restrictions, but basically it's happened where nobody wants to fly because they're all freaked out. So it's instead of restricting travel to certain places, nobody wants to fly, so all the airlines basically shut down.
Yeah. I next door neighbor's a pilot for Southwest Airlines, and so that's what we talk about every time I see him. Is just the status of how many people are on any one of his flights nowadays. He's had completely empty, completely no cargo, no people, nothing. But some people are flying.
Yeah, some people are flying. That's right. And actually, there was a story I wanted to talk about later about how one Harvard professor thinks that it's actually a lot safer than you think to get on an airplane right now. So we should have that story coming up in just a little bit. I also said in my notes from 2 months ago that I was concerned about sports and when they might come back. And I said, is football in jeopardy? Not sure, but it wouldn't surprise me. I want to know if they're going to be opening community pools. Well, and I said at the time, we have 2 months until they're supposed to open. Who's going to want to go to Disney World when it's jam-packed, shoulder to shoulder, full of people? We'll just have to adjust and adapt and overcome, but it will take some time. Again, all of those things have basically come to fruition.
Yes, you were right.
Amazing.
What else? Okay, so what else? We need to get your predictions today.
Of what's going to happen?
Now.
I know. I should come up with some notes about what I think schools are going to be a big issue. There's going to be probably a mix of remote learning and in-person learning, and not just having kids at the school, but maybe having kids at the school. So one day your kid goes to what regular school they're supposed to go to. And then the next day they go to the local public library and do some of their learning there. And the next day they do home learning. And then the next day they're at school again. So you have a rotational mix of where your kids are supposed to go, how they're supposed to get to these places on the buses, and how that all is going to work. No clue. But you got to think that the buses are already overpacked. The CDC guidelines said every other seat. So exactly, how are you going to do something like, or leave every other seat empty, So you're going to have to run extra buses, so that's going to cost the district extra money. They don't have the number of drivers that are needed, and this is not just here in Metro Denver. This is anywhere around the country. We're talking about, same kind of issues. We're back in January and February as we're going to see it coming up this fall, and I don't know how they're going to deal with it. Most of the people that are working from home have had the ability to log on from their home and work for a long time. And after we get out of this lockdown, I think people will start going back to work, but how many will stay home instead of asking? I think the businesses will be doing this. Instead of asking, is there a reason to do this meeting online? We'll be asking, is there a reason to do this meeting in person?
Right.
It used to be the other way around. Can we do this online? Are we willing to pay for Zoom? Are we willing to pay for the Google Hangouts or whatever system that these businesses wanted to do? And so instead of then trying to figure out, we all have to meet here. Now everybody's going to have to meet online. So that means the catering businesses that usually supply coffee and supplied donuts and all the other stuff. There's a ripple effect to all these different things that we used to do that now are going to be completely changed moving forward.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, but the problem with working from home, and you and I discussed that a bit, it's so much different than at the office. The urge to get up when you are home, you're easily interrupted by your family. There's the draw by the refrigerator every single moment just to go up and snack, get another a water or a tea or a coffee or whatever right there from the kitchen. Those interruptions from kids change, and obviously now that they're not in school, you're not having to help them with math as I've been helping with my girls with math, but when the school is out, you're still going to be interrupted with the kids. Yesterday, I was trying to get some work done, and Jolene says, "Daddy, I need some help with this and this and this." And because they see you can't just keep saying, "Well, look, don't bother me, don't bother me, don't bother me. I'm working." That gets a little old for the kids.
I was talking about that with Brian Sanders as well. That whole, you tell him I'm working, 2 seconds later, Mom.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Doesn't really click with that what that means at the younger ages, especially. I did talk to one friend of mine with teenagers who was was not happy about school ending. She felt at least this gave her kids something they had to do every day for a while, and now she's actually really worried about summer for her two 16-year-olds. So that's that gave me some different perspective on what different challenges different families have, different ages. Because for me, it would, for us with younger kids, you've had to help them a lot, but with the older kids, at least they were able to go to their rooms and do something. They had to get their work done. But now, I mean, teenagers, do they work this summer?
Where are they going to work?
The pools are closed, the rec centers are closed, the restaurants are closed, and and a lot of parents, I'm sure, don't want their kids going and working in some of these places that are hiring. So yeah, teenagers, I think, might not be the summer to make. I will say I might be hiring some for babysitting because I haven't been away from my kids we have not had one night of a break, and I think we're ready for maybe just a babysitter.
But where are you going to go? You're just going to sit in your car and order takeout and then.
I'm just gonna exactly. I don't care. They take the kids into the basement and watch them for all I care.
Perfect. But as I was thinking about it, isn't this the world that we were promised? The world of the future where people would work from remote locations and rarely go to an office and not drive to an office and keep their car in the garage all the time. And when all of this is really over, how many more of us will be still working from home? How will they affect the economy? When you take a quarter or half of all the cars off the roads, the auto repair shops, the gas stations, the coffee shops, all the businesses and jobs, including mine, that are based on people driving to and from work. What about that little sandwich cart or coffee cart in the office building? That person, are they ever going to come back and provide that service? Without those workers in that building, those little businesses don't exist anymore. If they don't make your sandwich because you're at home making your own sandwich, then they don't have that cart. It's an urbanist dream, actually, having everyone live in tall buildings where no one is driving and we all work from our homes or from a spot in our office building. It's not my dream, but depending on how we come out of all of this, there will obviously be long-term economic consequences based on all of this. And I was also thinking about the toll roads. how many fewer people are driving on the toll roads. The toll road revenue is going to be down. I should check in with our local toll road authority, E470, and see how
that's a
the
great
revenue
idea.
is decreased because there are fewer people on the road, and how that affects their repayment of the bonds. And they just went through a big expansion of their road to widen it because traffic was getting busier and busier on that road all the time.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great point. And a lot of the, so much of the discussion that we've had over the last several years with roads in Colorado has been about the massive need to spend billions to fix them. But that construction's happening right now with fewer cars on the road, some of it. But will there be a need to make some of these adjustments to the roads if not as many people will be driving on them?
So I was talking earlier with you about how when this all started, it was just supposed to be essential personnel driving around, and traffic around the country was very light. And INRIX, this is a company that controls and really figures out traffic flow. That's what they basically do, is they figure out traffic flow, and they send that data out to Google Maps and to other places. So that's why you see the red and the yellow and the green on those traffic maps. Well, road traffic was down by about 30% at the start of the stay-at-home order, and it was down up to 70% in some parts of the country. Around Denver, it was down around 55 to 60% at the peak, and total traffic volume dropped nationally. It started really on that Friday, March 13th. Is that any coincidence on a Friday the 13th?
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that's a good, I didn't even think about that.
Kind of creepy, huh? Yeah. Long-haul traffic has remained flat because the national supply chain is still holding up, and deliveries of freight still need to be made. And a lot of folks are getting now stuff delivered, and still deliveries have to be made. Local area commercial vehicle traffic, those delivery trucks, the smaller delivery trucks, that is way down, obviously, as a result of fewer businesses being open, and you can't get a delivery when your business is closed and you don't have any customers. So those little delivery trucks are not driving around right now. But I do imagine traffic will stay decreased over the next several weeks here as we're getting closer and closer to June. It should start picking up, I would think, June 1st. At least here in Denver, it's already picking up in other parts of the country, in Florida and Georgia, where they're already starting to open up. And as more restrictions are lifted, obviously, traffic will start picking up, but it'll be interesting to see how traffic patterns are going to change in the summer and fall, especially if the remote learning continues, because the traffic patterns, not just here, but really any major city in the country, it really depends on how many people are going to or from school. School is a huge influencer to traffic and traffic patterns. And when people leave for work, when people have to drop off their kids at a daycare, at school, the buses going around, it is really a huge impact to all kinds of traffic. And so that'll be interesting to see how that changes.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, people don't tend to go to school that far from their homes. I had no idea that it was such an influencer, like you said.
Yeah, it really is. And it's going to change the way I do my job for sure. It already has. And speaking of that, there was actually a few traffic reporters at the very start of this whole thing who have already lost their jobs. Either were put on a furlough, just put on the side, and now some are being brought back. Obviously, there was some talk about even me not doing any traffic reports and just doing other things. I did work on other news stories while doing traffic reports in the morning, but because I argued that I think it's still worth it to have that information, one, for the essential workers that are out there, and two, to keep the normalcy of the morning show intact rather than try to break it up and then it just feels disjointed when it all starts getting back to some sort of normalcy.
Yeah, I see that. It looks like, am I wrong? All of this Denver traffic reporters and traffic anchors are still on the air, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. There was a time where some of them were off and not even doing any reports. Sam over there at Fox was bouncing around doing other different things, not doing stuff for a while, and then doing other reports, and now she's back doing traffic. And Ken, the same thing over at Channel 2. He wasn't really doing any traffic stuff, but he was still on the air doing other things. And Channel 4 really doesn't seem to care very much about the whole thing, nor does Channel 9, apparently, because they just, when they got rid of Amelia and put her on that sales show, they've had some of their weather people just doing the traffic. They do have a open job position for a traffic person over at Channel 9, but that has not been filled as far as I know. And they have, it doesn't seem like they really care.
Well, interesting.
Yeah.
I think you're right that it's still good to get some of that information out there, and you could have saved me some trouble yesterday. I got on C470 and they had closed Santa Fe.
See? Right
so
there.
It took me I had to go around. It took like 10 extra minutes to get to my live shot. So
see, you should there are other people that do use me as their own personal traffic reporter. So speaking of that, actually, there was a longtime Indianapolis morning traffic reporter. Her name is Mimi Pierce, and she was actually let go from Channel 13 from WTHR-TV as part of an, air quotes, strategic change in the way the station wants to cover traffic going forward. So neither Mimi, who had been at the station for 18 years, or the TV station disclosed whether she was fired or resigned, but we all know when you were let go and you really don't want to be let go, what really happened. But she said on her Twitter account that they have made changes to their traffic operations, and as a result, there was she's already off the air. The Indianapolis Business Journal reached out for a comment. She never replied back to them. Mimi says that she would continue to do radio traffic reports for a local country radio station, which she has done for 34 years. And the story is disturbing to me on a couple of levels, and I hope it's really not a sign of things to come. So WTHR said that going forward, Mimi will not be replaced. So they're not going to have a new traffic person on their morning show. They're no longer going to have any dedicated person covering traffic. They said, quote, "The traditional traffic reporter will not exist in this new model." That's from WTHR General Manager and President Michael Broder. And he told the Indianapolis Business Journal, saying that the role will be shared among weather, a social reporter, and, if warranted, an anchor. It all depends on the story of traffic on that particular day. The GM said that the morning traffic reports will take a more social, interactive presentation interwoven into a broader conversation of the day's events. What the heck does that mean?
I don't know. I mean, you can't. How would you do that? You can't predict what the traffic is going to be for a given day.
Of course not.
So how, without someone constantly monitoring these things, how would you possibly know?
I mean, does he think that? I mean, does he think that someone's just going to use Twitter or other social media to send out the updates? I mean, does he realize that a person, actually needs to send out that information? And nobody knows better than I do how much time it actually takes to send just the Twitter feed that I do in the morning show takes up a lot of time. And then you're also preparing your other stuff.
I mean, Jayson, you could probably make an argument that if anything, you would still need a full-time traffic person in the morning just sending out those updates and alerts. And even if their on-air hits were reduced, if you didn't appear on air quite as much, if there wasn't a serious accident or issue, you still would need to send the updates that people are used to getting and that people rely on, and those require, full-time attention on their own.
Yeah, the GM just doesn't understand that this someone has to gather that information and then present it out there to the public in whatever form that he wants, and that the gathering has to be done by probably a producer now, something that the producer doesn't want to do, something that has been now added to their job, and I'm sure without any additional pay, and that's going to be a huge bug in the producer's craw in a major way. Being a TV producer for a daily newscast, it's a pretty tough job. They don't get anything
No.
really any credit for the amount of work they do. They don't need anything more dumped on them that they already have to do now extra graphics and extra writing. And there's a lot of stuff that has been poured onto them just because of consolidation in a news department. And then now that producer has to figure out a way to relay that information to a weather anchor or the news anchor. And then that news anchor or weather anchor has to then relay that information onto the public over the air. And someone has to manipulate the traffic map or set up the cameras to get that on air. It's not an ideal situation to have someone like the weather person to do two separate and distinct jobs. I mean, from experience, that person will not pay attention to whatever is going on the road in a timely manner. And it will be the viewer who will be suffering because they will not get that information. And yes, the average person can get that info from their phone or from Waze, but sometimes there needs to be context to the information someone is seeing on their phone. And it's not going to come from the weather anchor or the news anchor or anyone else except by someone who does traffic for a living.
Yeah, I agree. It's, and the problem is at some point I don't know. I don't like to speculate too much on where our industry is going because this could change a lot of things for TV stations. But I mean, we imagine at some point things will be busy again out there.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So I don't know. I don't see the point in making some of these decisions right now necessarily. I understand that stations that are cutting budgets are probably looking at traffic as something they don't need as much right now. But it's unfortunate because it's certainly something that will remain an issue into the future.
I think I can explain the move actually by explaining who now owns WTHR in Indianapolis. Last June, the station was sold by longtime owner Dispatch Broadcast Group to Tegna. Yay, Tegna. Dispatch Group was a family-owned station. Tegna is not, and is always trying to do things what they think are hip and cool, and make TV news more like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. And I understand having to change and to adopt, but having Tegna as your now parent company, they have destroyed many other newsrooms in the country with dramatic changes that are so far out of a more traditional newscast. And once they do that, they try to come back. It's failed in markets like Tampa. They have our 6 o'clock newscast with Kyle Clark. That's obviously a much different news style. He tends to be a lot more opinionated with his news broadcast. I mean, here's what people want from news. See if you agree with me, Nicole.
Okay.
They want to know that the world is still standing. They want to have the latest information just presented in a friendly, conversational, condensed way by people they would want to hang out with and people that they trust, so they don't feel dumb when someone asks them at work or at home or when they're out and about, what's going on? It really isn't that hard. It also includes traffic information, especially when it comes to large-scale traffic events or weather-related events.
Yeah.
I mean, what is the weather anchor going to do when a storm is happening and then traffic is terrible because the weather is causing traffic to be terrible? If you spend half of your time on two different tasks, you're going to get half as good of a product. I'm always telling my girls, whatever you focus on grows, and it doesn't matter if it's your schoolwork or watching TV or their baton twirling. Whatever you focus on will grow. And now that WTHR is not focused on traffic at all and treating it as a throwaway, the viewer is going to see that as well. And I think that the traffic-interested viewers are going to look for another TV station to get that information. And I could recommend our TV6 there in Indianapolis as a way to get your best and latest traffic updates from people that you know and trust.
Nice.
that happens to be a Scripps-owned station, as we are.
Well, I don't think they're also thinking about the winter, like you said, and right now it's certainly the time of year when weather does not impede traffic, but that will change, obviously. We'll spend a good 6 months of our year talking just about that.
Yeah,
so
probably. There's one other story I wanted to talk about before we have to go. There is a professor from Harvard who says in an op-ed piece that was in the Washington Post that traveling by air might not be as dangerous virus-wise as you might think. His name is Joseph Allen. He's the assistant professor of exposure assessment science. That's pretty interesting. You got to figure that he's a pretty smart guy to be the professor of exposure assessment science at Harvard.
Yes. Did that job exist before this? Wow.
Well, I don't know. That's a good question, or if it just popped up, or it's been there for a while. But he says that despite what you might think, you don't get sick on airplanes any more than anywhere else in the world. He says airlines have for many years worked to keep passengers safe from diseases while they are traveling, saying the ventilating system requirements for all airplanes, they meet the levels recommended by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for use with COVID-19 patients in airborne infection isolation rooms. Professor Allen also points to a study about a person suffering from tuberculosis who took a flight with 169 other passengers, and according to the study, the median risk of infection to the other passengers on that airplane was between 1 in 10,000 up to 1 in a million.
Wow.
So wearing a mask, as many of the airlines require now, will continue to reduce the incidence of infection, he says, and so flying on an airplane really isn't that bad.
Well, that's a relief.
But someone else who commented on the article pushed back on Professor Allen's statement, saying that air travel doesn't make it any more likely that you're going to contract that you're going to get the infection. Ethan Weiss, he's a San Francisco-based cardiologist. He was in New York volunteering at a hospital there to care for patients infected with coronavirus. And he was headed back to San Francisco after his stint in New York. And when he boarded the packed flight, he said there was no social distancing. The middle seats were not open as they're supposed to be to provide the social distance. He said, quote, "I'm more scared of getting on the airplane on a Saturday than I am walking into a hospital." That seems a little drastic.
I'm sorry. So what was his expertise on it then? The doctor. I realize that. But did he have some other statistics to refute the study?
No, he just used his own personal feelings about how he doesn't think that an airplane is that actually safe, and that he thought that it was a lot safer to go into a hospital.
Well, I'm surprised that he would say that. I don't know. I mean, you have to have something to go on.
Well, I know, because they exchange the air in those.
Go with the statistics, yeah.
You should ask this. You should talk to the pilot from Southwest about this next time you talk to him, because they exchange the air in the cabin about 10 to 12 times every hour. In a hospital room, it is, I think, less than that. So they're really changing, and they have these filters, the HEPA filters, the ones that are recommended by the CDC, which captures about 99% of all the airborne particles, including viruses, because you can get special filters for all of that stuff. I have one in my furnace now. But they actually recycle the air and recapture the air and clean the air a lot more frequently on the airplanes than they actually do in some of those hospital rooms. So if you wear a mask and you're washing your hands and you're trying to at least maintaining social distance as much as you can, then you should be fine. And actually, here's what Professor Allen would like to see airports do. Okay. He would like to require masks in the airport by everybody who's either flying or working there. Make bathrooms touchless. I think they're pretty much there already for the most part, except when you're touching your clothes or yourself when you're cleaning up. Increase ventilation rates. Consider deploying upper room germicidal UV fixtures in areas with high occupancy density. So those, what are they? UVC lights that can kill the virus,
okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I know they're not good for your skin, but I know they're also not good for viruses too. Also, institute temperature screening. I had to go through one of those when I was going to the doctor the other day to get my knee looked at. Deploy hand sanitizer stations. Require passengers to stay in one designated area once they check in, and when they get to the gate, they will hang out there only instead of wandering around that part of the concourse. Just hang around the gate that they depart from. Professor Allen also has these tips for the airlines. Ensure gate-based ventilation is operating during the boarding and the disembarking process. Have a plan for loading the airplane in a safe way. requiring masks for everybody, and providing meals and bottled water during the boarding, and discontinue any in-flight meals or drink service, which is interesting.
Well, there's not too much to that anyway, so that would be a big one.
Yeah,
but
it's not like when you used to fly on Delta or Mexicana. It was funny. I was
Yeah.
in the garage the other day, and I was cleaning something out, and I found these utensils, these actual metal utensils from a flight I took on Mexicana Airlines.
Gold?
They are real metal utensils, a knife, a fork, or spoon, the whole thing. And you would never see that. I think it had to be 20 years old, but you'd never see that on any flight now.
Oh, hey. No, that is fascinating. I'm. How did you get those utensils, Jason? You just kept.
Well,
Flight?
I don't know. I'm not. I don't know if I could admit that on this public broadcast.
All right. Well, that's
Let's just say they became into my possession.
I feel better about that. I know some people who are planning to fly in the near future, and my neighbor, the pilot, has not been sick. Obviously, he's been flying. That's just one person, but he was a little more nervous. I know he did go get tested once for COVID-19 and was out of an abundance of caution, but he has not been sick at all. And hopefully, what I really wish we knew more is where most people are getting sick. And I feel like we are getting some data that it is happening a lot in, obviously, senior homes, residences, involving the workers and the patients there. We know a large number of cases are in those places. We also have seen that people who work in stores, sadly, are high risk, and food processing facilities and any of these places where you're just there all day long.
Yeah, there were several other stories I wanted to get to, but we don't have time for it right now. Maybe we should hold them for next week. Yeah, let's hold it for next week. One is about how people are now very leery about using any public transportation. That's obviously understandable, because even before all of this, there was always the jokes about how bad and how dirty bus seats and trains and subways are. And so there are fewer people now riding public transit. And there's also an interesting story about how there are fewer organs available for transplant since the rate of traffic fatalities is down. Fewer people are driving, fewer people are crashing, and therefore there are fewer people that are going to be donating their organs. But there are also more people driving drunk right now, and I think there is less traffic, and so there's more people or more enforcement that is able to catch some of the drunk drivers. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so catching drunks is way up, fatalities is way down, and use of public transportation is way down, but we could talk about that next time. Yeah,
well, it's fascinating stuff. Our station said that we were going to go back to doing some more non-coronavirus related coverage. And my thought is almost everything you talk about right now is affected by this in some way.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, sure. We can do stories that aren't about coronavirus, but pretty much everything you start to talk about and look into now has somehow been impacted by this.
Yeah.
So it's almost impossible not to talk about the virus.
And it will for years to come. For years to come, this will be a major factor for us. Now, obviously, it happened back in 100 years ago in 1918, 1919, and then it was wiped away, and everybody got back to normal, and the Roaring 20s happened, and who cares? Everybody was doing the swing and dancing in the Roaring 20s and the Great Gatsby and that whole thing. So we will be back at it. I think the 2020s will be roaring once again. It's just going to take some time for us to get to that point.
I hope so. I really do. I don't want a new normal. I want the old normal back.
Yeah, I want the old normal back too, exactly.
I like the old normal just fine.
Well, thanks again for filling in here again today, and we will maybe chat with you again next week, as we're going to get back to doing more of the podcast, I hope. If there are any questions or comments about the show, if you want to send us an email, we'd love messages to the show. You can either send an email to DrivingYouCrazyPodcast@gmail.com, or you can, of course, use the phone number and leave a voicemail message at 303-836-9797. 303-832-0217. 303-832-0217. So thanks again for listening, and until next time, I'm Jayson Luber, the traffic guy.
And I'm Nicole Brady, just hanging in there like all of us these days.
Just sitting in your car, waiting on a Zoom meeting. All right, be safe, and as always,
be safe, everyone.
Happy motoring.